I married the most powerful mafia boss in Africa. This is part 2. If you're new here, start from the beginning to better understand my story. I was exhausted, not just tired, drained in a way that made my head ache and my shoulders feel like they were carrying concrete. Midterms were done, finally. But my mind wouldn't stop spinning. I was lying on my bed in the hostel. Books stacked haphazardly on my desk, tea gone cold beside me. Phone buzzing lightly on the pillow. I didn't answer at first. Didn't want to. Then my mother called. Casual enough, just a reminder about money, about chores, about life ticking on somewhere else. But I felt it, an unease that didn't belong to anything real. Just small reminders of responsibility pressing in. I hung up, tried to shake it off, told myself it was nothing, just the ordinary weight of living. That's when the messages came, from my friends, teasing me. You're always saying no, come on. I hesitated, I was tired, I was broke. I had lectures, assignments, errands, life I couldn't ignore. I stared at my wallet, counted it twice, glanced at my half-packed laundry pile. At the notebook I hadn't opened in 2 days. Everything in me screamed caution. And yet, I wanted to move. I wanted air. I wanted a few hours where I didn't think about obligations, about money, about responsibilities, about me trying to be perfect. I just need one night where I don't think. I admitted it quietly, almost to myself, like a whispered excuse I could barely believe. I got up. Slowly. Deliberately. Chose something simple from my closet, something I already owned. Something that said I was okay enough, that I was trying, but not trying too hard. I brushed my hair, light makeup, nothing dramatic, nothing that would impress anyone. I wanted to leave my tired, careful self behind for a little while, and then I said it out loud. Okay, let's go. And just like that, the decision was made. No more debates in my head, no more hesitation, just stepping out into the night, into something unfamiliar, into the possibility of something. I didn't even know what. This section, the taxi slowed at the curb outside the club. The laughter from my friends filled the small space of the car, light and easy. I barely noticed it. I stared out the window, watching the wet pavement reflect the streetlights, orange and distorted. The reflections shimmered in a way that made everything feel both familiar and strange at the same time. My heart ticked a little faster, though I couldn't tell if it was from anticipation or just the rhythm of the night pressing against me. When we stepped out, the bass hit first. It wasn't just sound. It was vibration under my feet, through my chest, into my fingertips. The lights flickered in sharp bursts, strobes slicing through darkness and neon. The crowd moved like liquid, constant, pulsing. My friends disappeared almost immediately into the crowd. Drawn by the music and the energy, I hung back, scanning instead of joining. The club smelled of perfume and sweat and something like fried food, a strange combination that made the room feel real. Urgent. Alive. I made my way to the bar and ordered water, my fingers brushing the sticky counter. The bartender fumbled with a drink order in front of him, muttering to himself. I couldn't help but smile quietly, a small, human moment in the chaos. I found a spot near the edge, leaning lightly against the wall, eyes tracing the people who seemed to belong to this world effortlessly. Confidence radiating, overdressed, laughing too loud, too sharp. I didn't feel out of place exactly, just separate, observing. I felt a pulse of excitement I hadn't expected, the kind that prickles your skin and makes you notice everything at once. This isn't my world. I told myself, not in judgment, just fact. But I can watch from here, and somehow watching felt like permission, like the night had given me a space I didn't know I needed. I sipped the water, the cold against my tongue, grounding me, and I let my eyes wander. I let the lights, the bass, the movement wrap around me, just for a little while. I didn't notice him at first, not until I leaned against the wall, letting the crowd wash past me, that I felt it, a stillness at the edge of the dance floor, a calm in the middle of all the chaos. He was just standing there, quiet, observing, not moving with the rhythm of anyone else, not laughing or shouting, not trying. Our eyes met for a second, just a second, and I felt it. A flicker, like recognition without knowing what it was. I looked away, thinking maybe I'd imagined it, but he was still there. His posture measured, his breathing steady, like the music around him didn't reach him at all. And somehow, that made him impossible to ignore. Later, when I glanced back, he was scanning the room, reading it without performing, without demanding attention. There was a subtlety in it that I couldn't quite name. The way he stood slightly apart from the strobe lights, the hum of conversation brushing past him, and yet he seemed anchored, like nothing could pull him into the noise. I don't know why, but I found myself watching him longer than I intended, trying to understand why someone could be so still and calm while everything around him was spinning. He wasn't trying to impress anyone, and yet he stood out. Who is that? I thought. Though, of course, I didn't ask anyone. Not that it mattered. No one else seemed to notice him at all. I just felt a little curious, a little unsettled. And for the first time that night, I realized that being in the club wasn't just about escaping anymore. Something, or someone, was quietly pulling my attention. I stayed near the bar, nursing my water, pretending I wasn't scanning the crowd. And then, somehow, he was closer, leaning slightly so I could hear him over the music. His voice wasn't loud, just clear enough to reach me. Crazy night, huh? I blinked at him and let a small smile slip. Yeah, everyone's full of energy. It was strange. I didn't know him. I hadn't spoken to him before, and yet I felt this odd ease, like I could just exist and he would notice without judgment. We talked lightly, little things, the music, the weekend, the people around us. I caught myself laughing at a bartender who spilled a drink, and he noticed, just slightly, the corner of his mouth lifting. He didn't have to try. He just saw. And I realized I was noticing him too, how still he stayed, how calm his breathing was, how his eyes moved over the crowd without needing anyone to notice him. Not everyone can enjoy a crowd like this, he said after a pause. Watching me more than the dance floor, I hesitated. I guess I noticed differently. He smiled, faint, small. The kind of smile that doesn't demand anything, but somehow acknowledges everything. I can tell. And just like that, I felt it. The pull I hadn't expected. Comfortable, curious. Something like recognition, but stranger, quieter. I barely knew him, and yet I wanted to linger in that small space, in that short exchange, where the noise didn't matter, and it was just us noticing each other. I don't know why it mattered, or if it even did. I just knew that for the first time that night, being there felt like more than just an escape. We moved a little closer to hear each other over the music. Close enough that I could catch the faint scent of his cologne without it being overwhelming. Nothing happened. No brushes of hands, no leaning in too far, just this quiet presence beside me. I laughed at a friend's awkward attempt at a dance move, the kind that made everyone around her wince a little, and he noticed. Not with words, just a slight tilt of his head, like he was quietly acknowledging that yes, he saw, and yes, it was funny. A drink spilled near the bar, a puddle formed. The bartender panicked for a moment. I found myself chuckling. He glanced at it too, his eyes calm, almost amused in a way that didn't demand my attention, but somehow gave me permission to laugh. It was strange, this silent understanding forming between us. I didn't know him, I wasn't looking for anything, and yet it felt like someone was noticing me, not for how I looked or what I said, but for how I noticed the small things around me. He wasn't performing. He wasn't trying to charm anyone. He was just there, steady, watching, present. I realized I didn't want more. I didn't need more. I just wanted this small, quiet space where someone else was seeing me without expectation, without performance. And I didn't want it to end, not because I wanted him exactly, but because it felt rare to be seen like this. I don't even know how long we stood there, talking in fragments, laughing at the small absurdities around us. The crowd surged, lights flashed, music thumped, and yet, in that little pocket, it felt like the noise softened somehow. It was comforting, and a little unsettling. I didn't understand why I cared so much about someone I barely knew. I was laughing at some ridiculous move made on the dance floor when I noticed his phone vibrate. He glanced at it, just for a second, but it was enough to pull him out of the bubble we'd somehow made around ourselves. "Sorry," he said, leaning slightly closer over the music so I could hear him. Voice calm, measured. "I have to step out." And just like that, he was gone. No dramatic exit. No wave. Nothing. Just gone. I froze. My mouth opened and closed once, like I was about to say something, anything, but the words caught in my throat. My friends were still laughing at some joke I hadn't heard, but I couldn't focus on them. I tried to turn my attention back to the music, to the lights, to the swirl of people around me, but a little fissure had opened in the night, something inside me had paused, waiting for him to return. I caught myself tapping my foot nervously, replaying the tilt of his head, the faint curve of his smile, the way he'd noticed the small, almost invisible things I laughed at. Why did that matter? Why did it feel important? I shook my head slightly and let my friends pull me back into the crowd, into the noise. But my chest still hummed with that quiet unsettledness. Something small had shifted, and I didn't understand why. My friends nudged me back toward the crowd, teasing. "Where did you disappear?" one laughed, voice loud over the bass. I smiled, shrugged, said nothing specific, just a vague, you know, as if the night hadn't just tilted slightly on its axis. The music kept pounding, lights flickering across the sticky floor, everyone moving like nothing had changed. And I tried to move with them, laughed when I was supposed to, nodded at jokes. Outwardly, everything was normal. But inwardly, I was still there, in that corner where he had been, scanning the room quietly, composed, not performing, not needing anyone to notice. My foot tapped unconsciously, rhythm jagged, repeating a beat that had nothing to do with the music. I kept replaying the last words, his calm voice leaning close just enough, the faint tilt of his head toward the bartender's spill. The way he noticed without judgment. No one around me could see it, of course. Nothing about my face or my posture gave it away. But in the quiet spaces behind my eyes, something had paused. The night hadn't moved forward. I had. I couldn't explain why it mattered. I couldn't explain why I felt unmoored. I just knew that part of me had stepped out of the ordinary, into something small and quiet that had no name yet. The ride back was quiet at first. My friends were laughing and talking, but I wasn't really there. I stared out the window, watched the city lights smear across wet streets, reflections breaking apart in puddles. Every now and then, someone said something funny. I forced a smile, but my eyes stayed on the blur of yellow and red, like I was looking for something I couldn't find. My mind kept looping back. His smile, the tilt of his head when I laughed at the bartender, the way he didn't need to be loud, didn't need to try, didn't need to perform. He had just been there, noticing things I didn't even realize I was doing. I felt it again, that weight pressing against my chest. I told myself it was nothing. Just one night. He left. Nothing happened. But my hands wouldn't stop fidgeting, tapping my knees, gripping the seat, and his voice kept looping in my head. "Crazy night, huh?" Over and over, that faint, calm smile. I wanted to forget it. I tried, but I couldn't. I kept thinking, will I ever see him again? Even saying it in my head made it feel too real, like I'd started caring without meaning to. I felt suspended between the night and the normal world, like I'd stepped out of time for a few hours and everything had shifted, just slightly, and I didn't know how to put it back. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. I just stared out the window. Let the city streak past. Let it all sit there. Quiet. And somehow impossible to ignore. I closed the hostel door behind me, and suddenly the chatter, the bass, the heat of the club, all of it fell away. The room smelled faintly of detergent and old books, something so ordinary it made the night feel unreal. My shoes felt heavy in my hands as I kicked them aside. Even changing into pajamas felt deliberate, almost ceremonial, like I was trying to mark the end of something I couldn't name. I dropped my phone face down on the desk. No messages, no missed calls, just the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the faint scrape of a chair somewhere down the hall. I sat on the edge of my bed, legs tucked under me, and opened my journal. My pen hovered before moving, slow, careful. The words came out like fragments of a dream. Tonight was different. Somehow. I didn't reach out. I didn't text him. I didn't even imagine doing it. I just sat there, listening to my own breathing, noticing how my chest felt tight in a way that made no sense, how my heart had learned a rhythm I didn't recognize yet. Memories surfaced in tiny flashes. The tilt of his head when he smiled, the quiet way he noticed small things, the bartender fumbling, my friend tripping over her own feet, and how I had noticed him noticing. It made my chest ache, a strange mix of comfort and disturbance, like sunlight slipping through a crack in a heavy door. I couldn't explain it. I couldn't share it. Not yet. Something had shifted in me, quietly, almost imperceptibly, but enough that I felt unmoored, in the best and worst ways at once. The night was over. But my mind refused to leave.